The fog clung to the trees like a living thing, soft and cold against my skin. The cabin ahead was barely visible, a pale outline through the drifting mist, its windows flickering with an uncertain light, like a heartbeat. I remember the way the wind moved through the forest, rustling the dead leaves, whispering names I didn't recognize. Each step toward that faint glow felt heavier, as though the woods themselves were holding me back. Silence stretched around me, broken only by the occasional hum of something far away, or perhaps nothing at all. I told myself it was just my imagination, the kind of stories people whisper to keep themselves awake at night. But then I saw a shadow move inside the cabin, slow and deliberate, and the hairs on my neck rose in unison. That's when I realized I might not be alone. And as I reached the creaking door, a thought slithered into my mind. I never should have opened it. The forest opened slowly before me. Fog clung to the pines like pale fingers stretching down from the dark canopy. The air was cold, the kind that pricked my skin and lingered in my lungs. Shadows moved at the edges of my vision, always just out of focus, always gone when I blinked. I stepped onto a narrow path, dirt soft beneath my boots. Every footfall pressed into the damp earth, yet the path seemed endless. The trees leaned closer, watching, listening. A whisper drifted from nowhere, soft, a voice that could have been my imagination, but it called my name. I froze. The forest held its breath. Then the whisper came again. A dozen voices layered, urgent, pleading, fading, returning. I followed the trail deeper. The fog thickened, curling around my legs, cold and damp. It muffled my footsteps and swallowed the sound of the wind. Something brushed past my shoulder. A shadow, maybe, or a trick of fog. I turned, but the space behind me was empty. Only trees. Only silence. The whispers grew clearer, fragments of words I almost understood. Stay, don't go. They were close now, surrounding me, but I could see no one. The voices seemed to rise from the earth itself. Pine needles scratched my face as I stepped forward. The path narrowed. Roots twisted beneath my boots, pulling me into the dark. A faint movement flickered to my left, a silhouette among the trees. It didn't approach. It didn't retreat. It just waited. My breath became visible in the cold air, thick and trembling. The whispers shifted, circling my mind rather than my ears. I wanted to run. I wanted to stay. A sudden stillness fell. The forest held its shape, but the fog itself seemed heavier, closer. Every shadow froze. Even the voices paused, as if the world had swallowed its own breath. I walked on. The path led me between ancient trunks, their bark wet, glistening in the pale light. The whispers returned, softer now, almost shy, but always persistent. I brushed my fingers along a tree. It shivered under my touch. Or maybe I imagined it. A shiver ran down my spine. Anyway, the forest seemed alive, moving around me. Branches bent slightly, almost forming faces that vanished when I looked directly. The mist shifted, creating shapes I wanted to see, but fear would follow me home. I paused at a clearing. Nothing stood there, yet I felt eyes on me. Thousands of them, watching, breathing, patient. A single whisper carried above the rest. You're here, it was calm. It was urgent. It was waiting. I stepped forward, drawn to the sound. The ground was soft, the fog pressing against my legs. Each step echoed in a way that felt wrong. Time slowed, silence pressing around me. The shadows in the corner of my eyes moved again. They weren't chasing me. They weren't fleeing. They were following the rhythm of my own heartbeat. I stopped. The whispers faded slightly, leaving only the memory of voices. The fog rolled through the pines, brushing against my cheeks and neck. Cold, persistent, watching, and then the forest waited. For me to move, for me to speak, for me to vanish. I walked on, but I was not alone. Mist clung to the trees like a wet blanket. I followed the path, though it no longer felt familiar. Every step pressed into soil that seemed softer than before, almost alive. Through the thick fog, I saw it. A cabin, tucked behind a ridge, its outline blurry, as if it had always been hidden. It shouldn't have been there. The maps didn't mark it. yet the windows flickered with a strange, uneven light. No fire burned inside. No lantern hung from the porch. Only the faintest glow, pulsing as though breathing. I approached slowly. The door creaked on its own, a single hinge moving against quiet. It opened just enough of the darkness inside to press outward. Shadows pooled in the corners. The air smelled faintly of pine and something older, something metallic. Every surface absorbed light. Every angle seemed too deep, too empty. I stepped closer. A floorboard groaned under my weight, echoing unnaturally. Something moved at the edge of my vision. I turned, but the corner was empty. Still, silent. The fog outside pressed against the windows, curling in like smoke. I could hear my own breath, slow and uneven, filling the room. Then I heard it again, movement, but not across the floor. It was in the shadows themselves. I ran my hand along the wall. Cold, rough, alive in a way I couldn't name. A whisper wind, or something else, brushed past my ear. "Don't look," it seemed to say. I forced my eyes toward the flickering light. Nothing there. Only corners that swallowed the glow. Only a darkness deeper than the night outside. I took another step. The door behind me shifted slightly, creaking as if it were settling. Yet I could have sworn it leaned closer, pressing against the frame. Waiting, the floor beneath me felt uneven, not because of the boards, but because the cabin itself seemed to breathe, expanding, contracting, a pulse, a rhythm. A shadow flickered again. I looked and it disappeared. But the cold followed me, brushing my neck, curling around my arms. The room smelled of damp wood and old smoke. I could feel the weight of the space pressing inward. Every corner seemed to stretch farther than it should. I imagined eyes, pale and hollow, following my steps. I imagined the cabin listening. I whispered a name, unsure if I wanted an answer. The walls remained silent. The flickering light continued its quiet pulse. I wanted to leave, but my feet moved closer to the center, drawn toward the glow, toward something I couldn't see, something waiting. The shadows shifted again, not in the corners this time. They moved along the walls, alive, patient, watching. I pressed my hand to a table, cold, solid, but it vibrated faintly beneath my touch, like the heartbeat of the cabin itself. The fog outside grew thicker, pressing against the windows, against the walls. It carried whispers I almost understood, soft, tangled voices promising nothing, or warning everything. I stepped back. The door moved slightly. The cabin exhaled a slow, deliberate sound that could have been wind or something alive. And then silence, the kind that presses into your chest and fills your ears. I realized I could not tell where the fog ended and the cabin began, or where I ended and it started. I left the door slightly ajar. The cabin waited, for me to return, or for something else to follow. The trail stretched ahead, swallowed by fog, so thick it clung to my clothes. Each step pressed into damp earth, soft and unyielding. The forest seemed to exhale around me, a cold, moist breath that trailed my spine. Then I heard it. Another step, mirroring mine. I froze. The echo came again, slightly slower this time. My breath puffed white in the air, trembling. I turned. Nothing. Only gray mist curling between the trunks. Only silence. I kept walking. The steps followed, keeping pace, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind. I couldn't see the owner. Couldn't see a thing beyond the fog. My boots sank into the wet soil. Roots tangled underfoot, tugging, tripping. Every step made the echo behind me sharper, closer, watching. I tried to convince myself it was imagination, a trick of the echo in the cold, empty forest. But my heartbeat thrummed in my ears, and the footsteps never faltered. The fog thickened, curling around my legs, my arms, filling my hair with damp. Every shadow seemed to stretch, bending toward me. Every tree trunk a dark sentinel. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I held my breath. Silence pressed against me. Then a pause. A hesitation. A single step closer than before. My chest seized. I spun around. Nothing. Only mist. Only shapes that dissolved when I focused. The trail ahead shimmered like it was moving, yet I stood still, trapped between fear and curiosity. I walked again. The rhythm of the footsteps shifted, faster, lighter, then slow, deliberate. It was impossible to know where I ended, and the echo began. Branches scraped my face. The smell of damp pine and cold soil filled my nose. I could feel the weight of unseen eyes tracking every motion. The forest itself seemed alive, bending to watch. The steps stopped again. I paused. The silence stretched, too long, pressing against my thoughts. Every instinct screamed to run, yet my feet stayed planted. Then a faint sound, almost beneath hearing, soft dragging. A shape moved just at the corner of my vision. When I blinked, it was gone. The fog swirled, twisting around my boots, crawling higher. The footsteps resumed. Closer now. I could feel their presence behind me, without seeing them. A cold gust pressed against my neck, carrying whispers that blended with the crunch of leaves. "You're not alone," they seemed to say, but I could not respond. I turned one last time. Nothing, only fog, stretching endlessly. The trail led me forward, deeper, twisting into the unknown. The echo of footsteps followed, patient, relentless. Every step I took was mirrored, every pause tracked, every heartbeat noted. I walked on. The mist swallowed the path. The forest pressed closer, and the footsteps kept pace. Dusk pressed its gray fingers through the trees. The fog hung low, curling around trunks and roots. The forest was quiet, but the silence felt alive, waiting. I saw it then, a pale face, peering from a second-story window of a cabin I hadn't noticed before. The eyes, impossibly large, hollow, fixed on me. I froze. The fog pressed against my boots. The air tasted metallic and cold. I called out softly. My voice was swallowed instantly. Nothing answered, only the faint echo of my own breath. The face didn't blink. It didn't move. It waited, watching. When I blinked, it was gone, the window empty. Yet the echo of slow, deliberate breathing lingered. My skin prickled. Every hair on my arms rose. It was as if unseen eyes traced my every motion. I stepped closer. The cabin exhaled, or maybe it was a forest. Shadows pooled beneath the roof, stretching down the walls. Every corner was a hollow mouth, waiting. The fog moved differently here. Thicker, heavier. It pushed against my clothes, my hair, my skin, curling into the hollow spaces of the world. I could almost hear whispers, soft, tangled words that disappeared when I tried to listen. The air thrummed faintly, like the pulse of something hiding just out of sight. A branch scraped against the cabin. It could have been wind. It could have been something else. My heart stuttered. I looked back at the window. Nothing. The pale face had vanished completely. Yet I felt it watching, still there in the corners of my mind. The cabin's shadow stretched across the clearing. It leaned toward me, not quite moving, not quite still. I imagined shapes shifting behind the walls. Faces, figures, breathless and silent. The ground beneath my boots was cold, wet with fog. The smell of damp pine and decaying leaves pressed into my nose. Every step I took seemed louder than the last. Every sound echoed in the emptiness. I stepped back, breaking the line of sight. The forest pressed closer, hiding paths, twisting the trail. I could feel the eyes in the cabin, threading through the fog. The sky darkened further. A single star appeared, trembling. The wind carried nothing but the memory of that pale face. I walked on, never looking back. The echo of hollow eyes followed me, through the fog, through the trees, patient, waiting. The cabin was still. The fog outside pressed against the windows, curling into corners. Air smelled faintly of damp wood and cold ash. Then the radio crackled. A soft hum at first, like distant machinery. It grew, layering over itself, until the static became voices. Fragments of words drifted through the room. I couldn't understand them, not fully, but one phrase repeated, faint and urgent. "You shouldn't be here." I reached for the dial, turning it slowly. Every station carried the same whisper. Quiet, insistent, following me. The hum of the radio pressed against my ears. My chest tightened. The voice seemed to move, not from the radio, but from somewhere inside the cabin, beneath the floorboards, behind the walls. I turned slowly, trying to locate it. Nothing moved. No flicker of shadow. No shift in the corners. Yet the air felt alive. The hum pulsed through the floor, vibrating beneath my boots. It echoed in my skull, soft, relentless. I held my breath. The voices whispered again. You shouldn't be here. Closer this time, as if pressing against my skin. I touched the radio. Cold, solid, but it thrummed faintly, like it remembered someone or something had been listening before me. I backed away. The cabin seemed to lean inward, drawing me toward the sound. Every shadow stretched unnaturally, reaching toward me, folding the room into itself. The static rose in pitch. I could feel it vibrating through my ribs, settling in my chest. The whisper followed me, soft, urgent, everywhere at once. I turned toward the window. The fog had thickened, curling into shapes that weren't quite trees. They hovered at the edge of vision, watching. I tried to step outside. The voice followed. Inside, outside, under the floor, in the walls. You shouldn't be here. My hand hovered over the radio again. The whisper shifted slightly. Closer, a breath at my ear. Not the radio, the cabin itself. I pressed my fingers to the cold wood of the wall. It shivered under my touch. Or perhaps I imagined it. The hum persisted, pulsing softly, like a heartbeat I could not escape. I moved toward the corner, trying to step away from the sound. The voices followed. Every station, every frequency, every shadow carried it. And then silence. The static stopped abruptly. The cabin seemed to inhale. The fog outside pressed against the glass, thick and unbroken. I could feel the quiet, but the warning lingered. You shouldn't be here. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I waited. The radio was still, but I knew the cabin was listening, and the whisper had not left. Snow covered the forest floor like a white, endless blanket. Each step I took sank softly, boots pressing into the cold, powdery ground. The air burned my lungs, crisp and biting. I noticed footprints ahead, deep, wide, leading toward the cabin and back. But no one was there. No tracks led away from the clearing. The prints were too heavy for me, too deliberate. They vanished abruptly at the edge, swallowed by snow and shadow. A shiver ran through me. The cold pressed against my skin. Yet, near me, there was a warmth, soft, fleeting, impossible to place. As if someone or something stood just out of sight. The cabin waited ahead, its outline blurred by fog and falling snow. The windows flickered faintly, though no fire burned inside. The world felt quieter here, yet the snow underfoot seemed to hum with presence. I stepped closer. The footprints reappeared, pausing, starting, always leading toward the cabin. Yet I could see no movement. The wind carried whispers, soft, tangled, and urgent. I couldn't understand them, but I felt the words brushing against my skin, cold and intimate. I traced a set of prints with my gloved hand. Snow crumbled beneath my touch. Yet the indentation remained unnaturally perfect, like frozen shadows pressed into the ground. A branch cracked behind me. I spun. Nothing, only snow-laden trees and the shifting fog. The warmth lingered, brushing the back of my neck. Closer, then fading, as if guiding me, or testing me. The footprints led to the cabin's door. It stood still, silent, untouched. Yet I felt a pulse from it, subtle like breathing wood. I moved to follow them inside. The cold pressed against my face, and the fog wrapped around my legs. Every shadow seemed to lean toward me. Every whisper carried promise or warning. Then the print stopped. The warmth vanished. The forest held its breath. I stepped carefully onto the porch. The snow had settled undisturbed, yet I could feel the weight of eyes hidden in the trees, watching, patient. The cabin exhaled faintly, a low, hollow sound carried by the wind. I hesitated at the door, tracing the prints one last time with my eyes. The snow shifted under the weight of unseen movement, and then silence. The forest waited. The footprints remained. And I moved forward, alone but not alone. The forest shifted as I walked, Branches brushed my arms, wet with fog. The air smelled of pine and something older, earthy and lingering. In the distance, a light flickered. A lantern, swinging gently, though no wind stirred the trees. It blinked once, twice, as if sending a quiet signal. I stepped closer. The fog pressed against my boots, curling into the hollows of the path. Every step made the forest feel alive, bending, rearranging itself around me. The lantern swayed again, a rhythm, almost deliberate, a soft glow at the edge of vision. I wanted to follow, yet fear rooted me in place. Branches shifted ahead. Shadows stretched across the ground, bending like liquid. The light pulsed, flickered, beckoned, then vanished, leaving only a faint glow lingering in my peripheral vision. I moved forward slowly. The path twisted beneath the fog. It wasn't the same as before. Curves and roots shifted subtly, as if the forest was testing me. The lantern appeared again, faint, fragile. It blinked once, a slow pulse, guiding, or warning. I couldn't tell. The air hummed quietly, carrying whispers I almost understood. Branches creaked, snow or frost falling silently. The glow disappeared behind a tree. I took a hesitant step, and it reappeared closer, yet impossible to reach. My boots sank into soft earth. The fog wrapped higher around my legs. I felt a presence near, something patient, something watching. The light flickered again, teasing the edges of the world. I reached out my hand. The glow felt distant, intangible, almost a memory. The path itself seemed to bend, divert, hiding the way forward. I hesitated, heart hammering quietly in my chest. The lantern blinked once more. Then it vanished completely. The forest returned to stillness, but I could feel it pressing inward, eyes in the fog, branches leaning, the faint echo of something breathing close. I kept walking, the path ahead uncertain, shifting, alive. The lantern's pulse remained at the edges of my vision, a promise, a warning, a whisper I could not grasp. And the forest waited, silent, patient. I moved forward into its fold, drawn by the faint glow. I descended a small slope. The fog pressed thicker now, curling into the hollows of the ground. Every step sank softly, muffled, swallowed by earth and mist. A hum rose from below, low, rhythmic, almost soothing. It vibrated through the soil, through my boots, threading into my chest. I knelt, pressing my ear to the ground. Silence, yet the hum lingered, louder inside my mind than anywhere else. The trees leaned inward, ancient and dark. Shadows stretched unnaturally, bowing toward the slope. The forest held its breath. I looked up. The world had changed. The fog hung heavier, darker. The colors of the forest muted, drained, as if the light itself feared to enter. The hum pulsed again, through the soles of my boots, through my fingers pressed to wet soil, through the rhythm of my heartbeat. I stood slowly. The slope beneath me seemed older, older than the trees, older than time itself. A branch tapped my shoulder, or maybe it was the earth shifting beneath me. The hum followed, persistent, almost patient. It whispered in a language I did not know, but I felt I could understand. The fog curled around my legs. Every tree trunk stretched taller, straighter, darker. Silence settled over everything else. Even the wind had ceased to breathe. The hum grew louder, pressing closer. I could feel it vibrating through my rib cage, threading into my thoughts. Every sound in the forest dimmed beside it. Even the whisper of the wind through the pines seemed distant now. I stepped back. The forest did not change. The fog remained, unmoving, pressing. The hum followed, echoing inside me, inside the slope, inside the soil. I wanted to flee, to run from the vibration, the pulse, the awareness. But my legs felt heavy, rooted to the earth. I bent to touch the ground again, cold, damp, unyielding. The hum thrummed beneath my hand, like the heartbeat of something vast, something patient, something alive. I straightened slowly. The forest waited, darker, older, silent. The hum faded slightly, leaving only a memory of vibration. A presence lingered, watching. Beneath the soil, beneath the fog, beneath me, I walked forward. The slope behind me seemed different. The forest shifted subtly, and the humming followed, soft, persistent, impossible to ignore. The fog thickened as I entered the clearing. A swing hung from a tree, moving slowly, though no child played. The chains creaked softly with each sway, measured, deliberate. I stepped closer. The ground beneath my boots was damp and soft. The air smelled faintly of pine and cold earth. A pale handprint appeared on the seat. Fresh, though no one was there. The fog seemed to pulse around it, curling into the clearing like smoke. I reached out hesitant. The chains trembled, squeaking under an unseen weight. The swing stopped abruptly as I stepped near. Silence pressed in, thick, heavy, alive. I could hear my own heartbeat echo in the stillness. The trees leaned inward. Shadows pooled beneath the trunks, stretching unnaturally. A presence lingered, waiting in the periphery of vision. I tried to call out, but my voice was swallowed. The fog answered in whispers. Soft, tangled words that brushed against my skin. The handprint faded slowly. Or perhaps I imagined it. Yet I felt the weight of something just beyond sight. Patient, watching. A branch scraped nearby. I turned sharply. Nothing. Only the fog shifting around the trunks, curling like smoke. The swing moved again. Slow, relentless, back and forth, whispering in rhythm with my own breath. I stepped closer, drawn despite fear. The fog thickened, swallowing the clearing. Every shadow seemed to pulse, lean, observe. I froze. The presence lingered behind my eyes, tracing my movements. The clearing felt smaller. The forest leaned in. A faint whisper brushed my ear. You're not alone. I wanted to run. I wanted to stay. The swing stopped. The fog pressed closer. And I realized the clearing was empty. Yet the presence remained. I walked on slowly. Every step careful, deliberate. The forest swallowed my movements. The swing remained silent, waiting. The tree line stretched ahead, dark and heavy with fog. Every step I took sank softly into the damp earth. The forest pressed closer, silent, patient. A figure waited. Dark, still, unmoving. It lingered at the edge, blending with the shadows. I stopped. It mirrored my stance, tilting its head when I did. Human in shape, yet elongated, unnatural. Every motion of mine reflected in its silence. I tried to call out. No sound left my throat. The fog swallowed it instantly. My breath clouded the air. The figure remained. Patient, watching. Every blink I took, it remained. I stepped forward slowly. The shadows bent toward it, or perhaps toward me. The forest itself seemed to stretch, bending around the figure. I dared to glance closer. Its face was featureless. Only darkness where eyes should be. Yet I felt a gaze, heavy, knowing, intimate. Branches scraped softly, the fog curling in silent waves. I wanted to run. I wanted to retreat. But fear rooted me in place. The figure moved slightly when I shifted. Not closer, not farther, just following the rhythm of my body, step for step. The forest seemed to lean inward. The air pressed against my chest, tight, cold, unyielding. Every sound, my own breathing, the crunch of leaves, was swallowed by the fog. I blinked. The shadow was gone, but its gaze lingered, heavy in my mind, traced the path of my eyes, tracked the rhythm of my heartbeat. I stepped forward. The fog wrapped around me, curling at my ankles. The trees leaned, listening. The trail ahead uncertain, twisting, alive. The shadow had vanished. Yet I could feel it, patient and still at the edge, watching. I walked on, alone, but not truly alone. The forest was quiet, almost unnaturally so. Branches hung heavy with fog. Every footstep pressed softly into damp earth, muffled and hollow. I saw it then. A door, standing alone in the middle of the forest. Weathered wood, peeling paint, hinges rusted. No frame, no wall, just a door, waiting. I stepped closer. The air pressed against me, cold, still. It smelled faintly of damp soil and old wood, a forest memory pressed into grain. I reached out and turned the handle. The door opened to thick blackness, a void that swallowed the light, the fog, even the forest around it. I stepped closer. Every movement echoed unnaturally, bouncing back at me from the void. The forest remained silent. No wind, no creak of branch, only the soft pulse of my heartbeat. A faint breathing drifted from the darkness. Slow, intentional. It wasn't wind. It wasn't mine. I hesitated. Something drew me in. A whisper, soft and patient. You are expected. The path behind me faded into fog. The trees leaned slightly, as if bending toward the void. Shadows pulled at my feet, stretching across the forest floor. I stepped closer. The air vibrated with quiet pressure. Cold pressed against my skin, brushing my neck, curling around my fingers. I took another step. The darkness beyond the doorway seemed to breathe. Slowly, in and out, patient, waiting. Every step echoed, lingering, dragging the world into silence. I wanted to retreat, but curiosity or something deeper pulled me forward. The fog outside the door pressed against the frame. The forest leaned inward, watching. The void remained, black, endless, alive in some way I could not name. I stepped closer still. The whisper followed me, soft, calm, insistent. You are expected. I didn't speak. I didn't move further. I simply waited. The forest waited. The door loomed, patient. The darkness beyond deepened. And I knew that stepping inside would change everything, or take nothing at all. The forest shifted around me. Fog clung to the pines, curling into low branches. Every step pressed into damp earth, soft and uneven. Then I saw it, a massive tree. Its trunk wider than any I'd seen, bark gnarled and ancient. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat under the soil. A low hum rose from it, vibrating through the ground, through my boots, through my bones. Soft at first, almost soothing, then insistent, pressing against my chest. I touched the bark. Cold, rough, alive. A shock ran through my fingers, spreading up my arm. The forest seemed to lean inward, listening. A whisper tickled my ear. Not words, exactly, but the echo of my own thoughts, twisted slightly. Familiar, unsettling. I stepped back. The hum followed. Each vibration a pulse beneath the ground. It seemed to call, patient, waiting. The fog curled around the base of the tree. Shadows pulled at the roots, stretching unnaturally. Branches bent slightly as if bowing. The air smelled faintly of pine, damp earth, and something older, something alive. I knelt, pressing my ear to the tree. I could hear nothing, yet the hum persisted, threading through the soil, threading into my mind. Every instinct screamed to leave, yet I couldn't move. The tree drew me in, patient, persistent, alive. A branch tapped my shoulder, or maybe it was a shift of the trunk itself. The whisper returned, almost a voice, soft, patient, familiar, yet wrong. I stepped back again. The forest seemed darker, older, every shadow sharper, every sound muted except the hum. It followed me as I walked. The pulse beneath my feet, beneath my hands, beneath my thoughts. A reminder that I was not alone. The tree loomed behind me, patient, its hum lingering, a low, insistent vibration that refused to fade. And the forest waited, watching, listening. A narrow stream curved through the fog, water dark and still. The surface mirrored the gray sky, the mist curling above it like smoke. Every ripple caught the pale light, trembling softly. I knelt at the edge, brushing my fingers through the cold water. It was heavier than it should be, thicker somehow, swallowing the sound of my movement. I looked into the stream, and my reflection smiled. Without me, I stumbled back, cold seeping through my boots. The water rippled, forming shapes that shouldn't exist, curved, twisted forms that seemed to watch me, patient and silent. I wanted to run. I wanted to tear my eyes away. But the reflection moved on its own. Step by step, it stepped forward. The fog thickened around me. Every tree leaned in slightly, watching. Branches scraped against each other softly, echoing like distant whispers. I reached toward the stream. The reflection raised its hand, mirroring mine, but there was no warmth, only a cold that seeped into my bones. A faint hum rose from the water, soft, steady, like a heartbeat beneath the surface. The shapes in the stream shifted, curling, stretching, and the reflection stepped closer still. I could feel the forest pressing in, the fog curling around my legs. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the stream held me, patient, insistent. The reflection's smile widened, impossibly slow. I blinked. The water rippled, the shapes dissolving, yet the image remained in my mind. I stepped back, slipping slightly in the mud. The stream remained dark, still, quiet. Yet I could feel the presence of that mirrored figure beside me, just beyond the water's edge. The fog pressed closer, thick, cold. The forest waited. The reflection lingered, silent, patient, watching. I walked on. The stream followed my path in silence, and I knew it would not forget. The cabin stood ahead, dark against the fog. Its walls seemed alive, pulsing subtly, inhaling and exhaling like a creature. The air smelled faintly of damp wood and cold ash. I pressed my hand to the wall. Warmth, then sudden emptiness. The wood shivered beneath my fingers, like it remembered someone or something touching it before me. Floorboards creaked under my boots. Each sound echoed too loudly, bouncing through the walls. Every step felt mirrored inside me, matching my heartbeat, following my breath. The door shifted slightly, opened slowly, as if inviting me inside. I hesitated, drawn forward despite fear. The cabin seemed patient, breathing with anticipation. Shadows pooled in the corners. They didn't move like ordinary shadows. They thickened, stretched, folding the room into deeper darkness. The walls exhaled a low, almost imperceptible sigh. The air pressed against my skin, heavy, damp, alive. I could feel the weight of the cabin pressing inward, watching. A floorboard groaned beneath my hand, or beneath something else. I didn't look. I couldn't. The pulsing of the walls matched the rhythm of my own chest. A faint warmth ebbed and flowed, then vanished into cold. Each breath I took seemed to echo through the cabin, layering over itself. The door creaked again. It opened wider, revealing deeper shadows. The fog outside pressed against the windows, curling into the room like smoke. The cabin inhaled, then exhaled. Every corner seemed alive, folding inward. The darkness pressed against me. Patient, waiting. I stepped closer. The walls pulsed beneath my fingers, alive in a way I couldn't name. The floorboard beneath my boots echoed every heartbeat. Every creak sounded like a footstep inside me. The door remained open, patient. The fog outside thickened, curling into the cabin, brushing my face. The shadows leaned slightly, almost bowing. I could feel the pulse, the breath of the cabin itself. Slow, deliberate, watching. And I understood this place was alive. It remembered, it waited, and it breathed patient alongside me. The cabin was quiet, too quiet. The fog outside pressed against the windows, curling through cracks like smoke. Every step I took on the worn floorboards echoed unnaturally. Then I heard it, a low scratching beneath the floor, deliberate, measured, following the rhythm of my own movements. I knelt to listen. The scratching shifted into a whisper, soft, insistent, chilling. Don't leave. My hand hovered over the boards. I wanted to pull them up, to see what lurked below. Fear rooted me in place. The whisper repeated, closer this time. The floorboards groaned faintly beneath my weight. Each creak mirrored the pulse in my chest. The air pressed against my skin, damp and cold. I pressed my ear to the wood. The whisper circled me, soft, familiar, twisted. Every secret I had ever hidden seemed to curl through the boards. Every thought I tried to bury echoed back. The scratching stopped. The whisper vanished. For a moment, silence claimed the room. Then a faint tremor ran beneath my hands. The floorboards shifted imperceptibly, almost alive. I drew back, heart hammering. Every shadow leaned toward me, patient. The fog outside swirled. Branches scraped against the windows softly, like fingernails. The cabin listened. The boards remembered. I stood slowly, careful. The whisper didn't return, yet I felt its presence. Watching, waiting, beneath the floor, beneath the boards, beneath me. Every step I took echoed too loudly. Every breath felt too heavy. The air hummed with quiet insistence, with memory, with patience. I moved toward the stairs, leaving the floorboard behind. But I knew they were not empty. The scratching, the whisper, the presence still lingered. The cabin held its secrets close. Patient, alive, watching. A cold wind blew through the cabin. It slipped beneath the door, curling along the floor like smoke. Every corner held shadows, stretching just beyond my vision. The air carried whispers, a language I almost understood, soft and urgent. It brushed my ears, tickling, circling. The words twisted, familiar yet wrong. The light flickered, dancing across the walls. Shadows leapt, stretched, bowed. Every movement was deliberate, patient, watching. I drew a slow breath. The wind seemed to follow it, pressing against my chest. I tried to steady myself, to feel safe, but the whispers pressed closer, weaving into my thoughts. A branch scraped the window, or was it a hand brushing the glass? I could not tell. I dared not look. Every corner shifted slightly when I blinked. Not quite the same. The room leaned inward, folding. Patient, deliberate, alive. The wind whispered again, curling in my hair. Don't leave. Or perhaps stay. The meaning hovered, impossible to grasp, pressing on my mind. I stepped toward the doorway. The shadows bent, following. The cold brushed my skin closer, intimate. The light flickered one last time. A pale glow against dark wood and fog. The whispers circled me, pressing, patient. The wind carried them, closer than before. I wanted to flee. I wanted to close my eyes. But the room held me, patient, alive in every shiver, every breath, every shadow. The pale wind circled. It pressed against my neck, my arms, my thoughts. The cabin waited. The shadows leaned closer, and the whispers promised. Something I was not ready to hear. I ascended the staircase slowly. Each creaking step echoed unnaturally, lingering long after I had moved. The air smelled faintly of damp wood and something older, colder. Footsteps followed. Above me, matching mine, but the floor was empty. A pale light glowed beneath the door at the top, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. I tried to peer inside, but it receded each time I blinked, drawing me forward, or warning me back. I paused mid-step. The echo of my own breath filled the stairwell. Every shadow seemed to stretch, reaching downward. The steps above me continued, patient, deliberate. I tried call out. No sound left my throat, only the soft, rhythmic pulse of light. The floor beneath my boots shivered slightly, or perhaps I imagined it. The staircase leaned inward, shadows pressing against each side. The air grew colder, pressing against my chest, curling around my arms. I moved carefully. The footsteps above slowed, then quickened, keeping rhythm of my own. Every step sounded heavier than it should. Every pause felt intentional. The light pulsed beneath the door again. Slowly, deliberately, I could feel something waiting beyond. Patient, watching. I reached the top. The air trembled. Every heartbeat echoed in the silence. Then a soft sound descending. Slow, deliberate footsteps moving toward me, yet the room above remained empty. I froze. The pale light dimmed. Shadows leaning closer. The air pressed against my skin, damp, cold, alive. I stepped forward, careful, deliberate. The stairs seemed to stretch beneath me, echoing each movement. The footsteps followed, always present, always patient. And I realized I was not alone. Not in this house. Not anywhere the shadows lingered. An antique mirror leaned against the wall, its surface dark, polished, almost swallowing the light. I approached slowly, the floorboards groaning beneath each step. The reflection stared back at me. Not me. A dark figure stood behind my image, silent and still. I spun around. Nothing. I looked back at the mirror. The figure had shifted slightly closer. Silent. patient, every movement deliberate. My own reflection remained pale and uncertain. The figure's eyes were hollow, waiting, aware. I wanted to touch the glass, to shatter it, but hesitation held me. Each blink revealed the figure closer. It mirrored my motions perfectly, yet added something wrong. The shoulders stretched, the hands twisted subtly, just out of natural shape. The air smelled faintly of cold wood and damp plaster. A soft hum seemed to rise from the glass itself, vibrating beneath my skin. Every shadow in the room leaned toward the mirror. I stepped back slowly. The figure did not move. It waited, patient, persistent. I wanted to turn away, to flee from the presence lurking behind me in silvered glass. Yet my gaze returned, drawn as though pulled by the room itself. The reflection smiled, a slow, deliberate curl of lips that were not mine. My heart thumped in the quiet. The walls pressed closer. The floorboards creaked under invisible weight. I breathed shallowly. The mirror held me in its gaze. Silent, waiting. Every shadow in the room stretched. Every whisper in the corners seemed tied to the glass. The figure remained. Patient, I stepped back once more. The reflection lingered, and I knew it would wait. Always. The cabin was silent. Too silent. Every footstep I took echoed softly, swallowed quickly by the heavy air. Then I heard it, faint at first, a whisper, curling through the plaster, sliding along the walls. I pressed my ear against the wood. The whispers grew louder, closer. Familiar, yet strange. Every secret I had buried seemed to echo back, distorted. The air pressed against my skin, damp, cold. Shadows stretched in the corners, pooling, leaning toward me. I took a step back. The walls seemed to lean slightly, listening, patient. Every creak of the floor matched the rhythm of the whispers. I tried to follow the sound. It twisted around corners, rising and falling like a breath. It formed threats, memories I had never spoken aloud. Fragments of myself reflected in the hum. The whispers circled me, faint, urgent, intimate. I wanted to run, yet my feet remained rooted to the floor. A draft moved along my neck. Or perhaps it was a brush of air from some unseen presence. The walls hummed, patient, alive, aware. I pressed my hands to the plaster. It pulsed faintly beneath my fingers, vibrating softly, as if breathing. Every secret, every memory, every fear I had hidden, it was listening. I stepped back again. The whispers faded slightly, but the presence remained, watching, patient. The cabin held its breath. The walls hummed faintly, echoing with memory. I could feel them bending inward, attentive to my thoughts, my fear, my heartbeat. I moved toward the door. The whispers followed in silence, patient, deliberate. And I knew every wall, every shadow, every heartbeat in this cabin remembered and waited. A bookshelf sagged against the wall, dust curling in the corners. I noticed a faint line at the base, almost hidden. A door. I hesitated. The air smelled of old wood, damp plaster, and something faintly metallic. The whispers from the walls seemed to pause, waiting. I pushed the bookshelf aside. The door revealed a narrow passage, lit only by pale, faint light. It exhaled a cold draft that curled around my ankles, curling into the floor. Every step I took echoed too long, stretching unnaturally. The passage seemed to extend beyond reason, folding into itself. The walls hummed softly, vibrating with patient, unseen energy. I stepped forward. The air pressed against me, damp and alive, carrying the faintest whisper. It was almost a voice. Follow, or perhaps stay. The light flickered at the edges, guiding, teasing. Shadows leaned closer, curling around the narrow walls. The passage seemed to breathe, pulsing with every heartbeat I took. I could feel it pulling me deeper, drawing me in with patient insistence. The faint glow shimmered on the floor, on the walls, pressing inward. Every step made the echo of the hallway follow me, folding space around itself. The air grew colder. The whispers tangled with the hum, rising beneath the floorboards and curling into my ears. I could feel the walls listening, patient, deliberate. I reached the end, or what I thought was the end. The passage stretched slightly further, longer than it should have. Every movement felt observed, mirrored, anticipated. I hesitated. The passage breathed. The pale light pulsed, faint and distant. The walls leaned slightly closer. I stepped forward again. The hidden door closed softly behind me, though I hadn't noticed it move. The passage remained alive, patient, waiting for what I could not name. The hidden room was dark. The air smelled of damp wood and cold stone. Shadows pooled in the corners, folding into the edges of the room. A rocking chair moved slowly, back and forth. No one sat in it. No wind stirred the air. Yet it rocked, patient, deliberate, as if aware of me. I stepped closer. My boots pressed softly into the floor. The hum of the room pressed against my ears, low, subtle, insistent. The chair stopped, abruptly, as if it had been waiting for me to arrive. A cold brush touched my shoulder. Fingers? Air? Something else entirely? I couldn't tell. The room held me, patient, silent, watching. The hum rose slightly, vibrating beneath the floorboards. Every shadow leaned inward. The walls seemed to listen, remembering, aware. I reached for the chair. It trembled faintly under my fingers. Soft, deliberate, alive, the rocking resumed, slower, folded me into its rhythm. The room whispered, faint, patient, as though the air itself remembered my presence. Every step I had taken led here, to this motionless motion, this waiting. I stepped back. The chair continued to rock. The hum pulsed beneath my boots. The shadows leaned closer. I could feel a presence in the air. Patient, observant, aware of every movement, every breath. I left slowly, careful. The chair continued its rhythm. The room hummed softly, and I knew it would wait. Always. The mist outside thickened unnaturally. It curled around the trees, pressing low against the ground. Every step I took sank into soft, wet earth muffled by fog. Whispers rode on the air. Soft, almost imperceptible, but unmistakably calling my name. I stopped. The fog seemed to pulse, alive, bending around me. Shapes twisted in the haze. Familiar faces distorted, as if recalled from memory but never truly alive. They hovered at the edges of vision, patient, waiting. I tried to step back. The forest seemed to shift beneath me, closing in, opening, folding. Every path twisted. Every shadow leaned toward me. The whispers grew louder, urgent, soft, insistent. They pressed against my ears, my skin, threading through my thoughts. You are not alone, they seemed to say. Or perhaps, come closer. The fog shifted. It formed figures that melted into trees, into shadows, into shapes I could not name. Every movement was deliberate, patient, watching. I tried to move forward. The shapes twisted, forming a path that was familiar and impossible at once. The forest bent around me, alive, aware. A branch scraped my arm, cold, dry, or perhaps it was the fog itself brushing against me, testing, teasing. The whispers followed, threading through the mist, patient, insistent. Every shadow seemed to lean closer. I stopped, breathing shallowly. The fog swirled around me. Every sound muted, except the faint, urgent pulse of the whispers. And I knew, this mist remembered, it had always been waiting, alive, watching, speaking. At the cabin entrance, a dark silhouette waited, still, silent, patient. It did not move, yet I felt its awareness, heavy and deliberate. I stepped closer. Every instinct screamed to stop. Every shadow around me seemed to lean inward, folding the world into the doorway. The figure mirrored my movements, tilted its head when I did, kept the same distance, patient, waiting, not human, yet unmistakably aware. I tried call out. No sound left my throat, only the quiet hum of the forest, dense with fog and shadow. I took a hesitant step forward. The silhouette remained, unyielding, patient, watching. Branches scraped softly behind me, or perhaps against the doorframe itself. The air pressed close, damp, cold, insistent. I blinked. The shadow vanished. Yet I felt it linger, heavy in my chest. In my vision, tracing the rhythm of my heartbeat. I moved forward, careful. The doorway loomed, silent, watching. The force around me seemed to lean inward, patient, deliberate. I did not turn back. The shadow remained just out of sight. I could feel its presence in the edges of the fog, in every stretch of shadow, in every hesitant step. And though it had disappeared, I knew it had not gone. It waited, patient, silent, always. A soft voice whispered my name from the darkness. Calm, urgent. It brushed against my ears, threading through the fog that pressed low to the ground. I tried to respond. My own voice was swallowed instantly, lost in the mist. Every shadow shifted subtly, forming fleeting glimpses of figures I had never met. The fog curled closer, patient, deliberate. It carried the whispers with it, folding them into the air, into my thoughts. Every step I took echoed softly, yet the figures seemed to move with me, just beyond the edges of sight. I stopped. The voice lingered, insistent. Promises, secrets, things I was not ready to hear. I could feel it brushing against the back of my neck, close, patient. Branches scraped softly in the distance. Or perhaps it was the fog itself moving, aware, alive. The figures in the mist shifted again, folding and stretching. Familiar faces twisted, then vanished. I tried to step back. The ground beneath me felt uncertain, pliable, as though it could shift at any moment. The whispers followed, threading closer, circling my mind. I froze. Every shadow leaned inward. Every breath pressed against my chest. The fog whispered again, soft, deliberate, promising. I wanted to flee. I wanted to close my eyes. But the voice persisted, patient, waiting, inevitable. And I realized I was not alone. The fog, the whispers, the shifting shadows, they remembered. They had always been here, watching, waiting. The last whisper lingered, faint, almost tender. You are here. And then, silence. Back at the first cabin, I stood before the main door. It loomed in the fog, silent, patient. Every instinct warned me not to enter, yet something drew me forward. I reached out, hand trembling. The wood was cold, rough, alive in a way I could not name. I turned the handle. Darkness, only darkness beyond. The air inside felt heavy, pressing against my skin, alive. Shadows moved, slow, deliberate, as if breathing, shifting, folding around the room. A familiar whisper tickled my ear, soft and insistent. The forest outside was still, silent, holding its breath. The fog clung to the windows, curling like smoke. I stepped inside. The door closed behind me, a soft thud swallowed by shadows. Every creak of the floorboards mirrored my heartbeat. Every breath echoed against walls I couldn't see. The cabin seemed to breathe, inhaling, exhaling, alive in every shadow, every whisper, every movement just beyond sight. I could feel presence everywhere, watching, patient, somewhere beneath the floor, behind walls, inside the darkness itself. I wanted to turn back, but the door was gone. The forest outside no longer reachable. Only the cabin remained, alive, waiting. I realized then I never should have opened the door. Every shadow, every whisper, every breath of air pressed closer, deliberate. The cabin remembered me. It had always been patient. And now I was trapped within its rhythm. The darkness shifted. The whispers circled. And I understood I was not alone. Never alone.